Hi everyone, Joe March here. This is the Grand Infinity, and today we're talking about perception. As you all may know, perception affects how we view reality. Many people, when talking about perception, will talk about the way we look at a certain situation. They like to talk about it in positive or negative terms. We'll talk about that a little bit, but that's not the primary thing that I want to talk about here today. Primarily what I want to get at is how our perception colors everything that we see and affects the way that we experience the world and reality in general. Now firstly, let's talk about that first thing I mentioned, how perception colors our experiences. So if you look at an event and that event occurs, we all know on a very logical level that events themselves are neither positive nor negative. But if you treat an event that happens as if it's negative, you will react to it negatively. And if you treat an event as if it's positive, you will react to it positively. So your actions in response to something that happens are often affected primarily by your perception and not by the actual event itself. It's a showing of who you are, who you've become through your upbringing and experiences in how you react to things. That can be altered through the use of ritual, magic, meditation, even just mindfulness, and that's something that we've talked about a lot on this channel before. But what I didn't realize is that perception has a lot more to do with how absolutely every aspect of your reality is than just that. It isn't just how you are affected by things and how you react to them. It's also your experience within this reality, the way that you experience reality. And it's come to give me the answer to the question I've been asking since I started this YouTube channel. Which of the two is correct? The psychological model or the spiritual model? The answer may surprise you. The answer may even anger you. If you choose to disagree with me, that's fine. That's just your perception of reality. So what exactly are we talking about here? Well, it's no surprise to many of you that I've been gone from YouTube for a few months. Those of you who follow me regularly will have noticed that, and most of you know some of what was going on during that time. For the most part, I was spending time doing self-actualization. Those who have watched my videos near the end of the time that I was on YouTube would notice that I was starting to come out a lot with the truth of who I was, the past that I experienced, all of the darkness and light combined into one, this sort of blending of the natures of my own true self. I was starting to see behind the illusionary, egoic shielding that we put up in front of ourselves. And that caused me to need to spend a lot of time healing and coming to terms with things and accepting the self, which is what I've been up to. But as I've done that, I've come to realize that I am a unique individual, and I've come to understand how unique we each are, and one of the big things that was revealed to me is perception and how much of a role it plays in how we see reality in its entirety. So when I walk down the street, when I experience a sunny day, do I see and experience the same thing you do? My guess would be that I experience something similar, but that our experiences cannot and never will be exactly the same. You see, our perception paints absolutely everything that happens to us. Now, many people in spiritual communities have tried to take this and kind of turn it on its head. They would say, if you master your perception, you can alter reality. Well, to a degree, you can alter the way reality affects you, but that isn't the same thing as changing the base thing that's happening in the first place. So what I am proposing instead is that there is a true reality. There is something going on that is, I wouldn't say beyond our control, but that rather is something that we are in a process of interacting with. Our energy and that energy working together, if you want to go the energy route, us working with other spirits, if you want to go the spiritual route, our mind perceiving things in certain ways, if you want to go the mental route. The point being, there is some true reality that exists out there, but the way that we actually experience our reality is only a representation of that truth. This is why the greats always said that the entire world is just an illusion. We've confused that recently with the idea that it's a simulation or that it doesn't exist. The perceived world we're seeing does not exist, but it represents a world that does exist. That's the truth that's hard to understand because we in this form will never be able to perceive the reality of that. We will only perceive what we've been formed, we've come to understand how to perceive. So, how does this relate to magic? How does this relate to the models? If someone was to say to you that they worked with somebody, and through the time working with this person, they were shown demonic entities that were affecting their life, and they were taught how to overcome these entities, and they were able to banish these entities from them, and now they were a more whole person. How is that different from someone who tells you that they went to a therapist and they learned how to overcome internal strifes and internal problems they were experiencing, and they changed the very nature of who they were through working through problems in their past and came out as a better person? These two people are describing the exact same thing happening to them, but their perception of it is different. For a long time, I was caught up on trying to determine if all of the people who had the spiritual perspective were simply hallucinating, sort of, experiencing the psychological, but through their own means. And then, when I started having some strange experiences there that I couldn't explain, I said, well, then maybe it's that the psychological is wrong, and it's actually spiritual in nature. And so maybe these people are experiencing this in a way that they misunderstand. But that didn't turn out to be right. No matter what I did, as long as I tried to assume one of these two models was correct, it didn't work. And then I started to play with the idea that maybe neither model was correct. That also seemed to lead me nowhere. It's only when I came to understand that both models are correct, that for individual A, there are spirits affecting them, and for individual B, there are not, that I started to understand how your perspective, your perception, and your paradigm of reality affects how you interact with reality. We've talked about the grand infinity on here and my belief that we are all, at some core, one thing experiencing itself as many things. I've come to believe that the purpose of our reality is to exist as unique individuals, so that that thing can experience uniqueness, so that we, which are it, experience the various ways to live. I believe that this uniqueness goes a step farther than we realize, that we also have unique ways of seeing and experiencing reality, that these unique aspects of ourselves are unique to us, that is why my occult experience and yours may not match. But if we both practice the same thing, we'll get the same end results. Because the results are based on the actual reality that is triggering our perception, not the perception itself. When I fail is always when I try to figure out which perception is real. The answer is neither, and the answer is both. All of these things are real, and none of them are real. And these wise words have been said in many a grimoire, and I have never understood them until now. So I'm sharing this with you to ponder. I don't have much more to say on it, except please think of this next time that you're talking with someone you disagree with. Try to take a closer look at what they're saying. Sometimes we're disagreeing on something that's actually important, but a lot of times we're just coming at things from a different perception. If someone is trying to adamantly explain to you that they see spirits and work with spirits, instead of trying to talk to them and tell them that you don't believe spirits are real, ask them what resulted from it. Ask them what they did to cause it and what resulted. And start to see if you do similar practices, but instead of seeing spirits, perhaps you see your own faults, your own traits. This would be someone from the psychological model and someone from the spiritual model finally being able to talk to one another and understanding that they're both talking about the same thing with a different language. The energy model works the same way. Some people talk about resonance and how you can just resonate with a certain vibration or energy so that you can pull that energy in and experience it. For someone in the spiritual path, that would be invocation of an entity. But for someone on an energy path, there is no entity that they need to interact with. It is an energy that they interact with. You may think I'm splitting hairs here, but it's a lot different than you think. And the reason that I now know this is because I've started to be able to do this in these different ways. Get the same starting point and end point but have a different experience in between. It's just a different way to perceive what you're doing. And the actual thing you're doing is kind of an unknown because it's happening on a subconscious level, interacting with the reality that we cannot see and perceive. It's an energetic, that's a bad word for it, a thought-based reality perhaps. It's very hard to explain. If you practice enough, you'll come to these same conclusions. You may not come to the conclusions that one of these models isn't all the way right. You may just use one model and be fine with that. But you will come to the conclusions that there is something happening under the surface of the reality you're seeing, which is what you are actually interacting with in your day-to-day activities. And the big kicker to all this is we're all doing it, whether you're engaged in magic or not. Everyone is doing this. Those of us who choose a path of the occult and magic are just using that framework because it works with our perception. It's a method that works for us because it speaks to the way we already perceive reality. If you hear all this magic stuff and think it sounds like mumbo jumbo, your perception is different. Not wrong, different. You need to find your own method for, in a sense, hacking reality, affecting change within your world. And for the most part, what I've found that all of this boils down to is choosing to take an active role in your own life, choosing to take an active stance as the being that owns this particular body, playing in this game that is life. Now for many of you, you're going to think, I'm a rambling crazy person. For others, you're going to think I've completely proven myself to be not the occultist I said I was, because I am going away from everything that these grimoires have said all this time. And for a few of you, you're going to know I'm right. And I thought about not doing this video for the very fact that I knew it was not going to be a highly loved, a highly liked video. And I knew for most people starting out, it wasn't even going to be helpful. Because if you are new to magic and you want to get into these things, knowing this is not helpful. In fact, it's hurting you. You're going to try now to interact with these entities, but in the back of your mind, you've got this little earworm that I just put in you that says, none of this is 100% right. And that could push your confidence off just enough for your magic not to work. You're going to have to get over that. And getting over that is going to make your magic better if you can do that. I am now at the point where I understand that. I've been working in magic for 7 years. I've only just now come to understand this. Those of you out there who say, I have my method, it's the one that's right, fine. Your confidence around that method has to be so strong because of that belief that it would probably do you ill to try to come over to what I'm saying. I'm not trying to convince you all of what this is. I'm simply trying to give a model of understanding for those of you who have started to realize that what we're talking about with these seemingly different languages may actually be the same thing. If you can translate someone else's perception into your own, you can understand what they're actually talking about, what the invisible thing they're acting and working with actually is on an emotional level. And I'm not sure any of this video is actually making sense. This is where I am right now. And as I started to say, I almost didn't post this. I almost didn't post this primarily because I didn't want to knock anyone off of their course if they were trying very hard to stick to one perception, because full immersion into a certain perception is what helps it to work. That's why we talk about how you have to believe in what you're doing. Believe is kind of a bad way of explaining it. You need to immerse yourself in the concepts of what you're doing and actively perceive life through those concepts 24/7. And by doing that, you create a magical lifestyle. Allowing these things to be a method to interact with that lifestyle. There are other methods, non-magical. But the reason, again, that I almost didn't do this is because I assumed most people are going to hate this, or they're not going to understand it, or it's going to screw them up. So at first I thought, no, I'm not going to do it. But something inside said, you have to put this out there. You have to share this understanding, even if it's the last video you ever do, which it might be. And the biggest thing that I've learned is that it doesn't matter whether you or anyone else likes me or what I have to say. At the end of the